Hey guys, Scott here, and today I thought I'd be a little constructive with my time. Spent an hour or two working on some mock-ups for some ideas that I think could really help Dead by Daylight a lot, and they address two very big problems. One is solo queue and lack of communication, and the other is gens in general, going too fast, being boring, things like that. So first, let's talk about the communication aspect, because I firmly believe solo queue is the weakest thing in the game overall. I always say the hierarchy of difficulty is the hardest thing is solo survivor, and then killer, and then survive with friends has the highest potential overall. So I think instead of just nerfing survive with friends and pissing people off like that, we should be trying to address the issue with solo queue, which is the extreme lack of communication with teammates. And I think a system kind of like how a lot of games have, like Apex Legends has it, Dota has it, I think Counter-Strike has it. It's like where it's contextual based general blips. I think that could help immensely with solo queue, because it's just such a frustrating experience when you're sitting on the hook and nobody comes to save you, or everyone just keeps working on gens, or nobody's working on gens. Everyone's looking for totems all at the same time. These are all things that lead to the solo queue experience being really, really annoying a lot of the time, because you have no way of communicating with your teammates. And by default, this makes Survive with Friends so much stronger. So I think by bringing them a bit more in line with each other, then we can kind of buff Killer a little bit to compensate, and then we'll be on a much more even playing field that you can balance the game around. So I just wanted to show you an example of the ideas that were kind of going on through my head. It's a pretty simple system. A lot of games use a system like this, but it would be contextual. So you would just be, running down the hall. You'd press whatever the button would be. You can bind it to whatever you want. It would bring up a contextual mouse window like this. And basically, you would be able to just move your mouse very quickly and address which one of these things that you would want to, say. And it would be contextual too. So if you're not in a chase, you're not injured, you're not in anything like that, it would just have generic things like I'll rescue, I'm looking for totems, I'm looking for parts. The parts thing I'll get to later because that's the other part of the video I want to talk about. But it would just be a very simple contextual based thing. So that would be that menu. And then if you were to go on a generator, the contextual menu would change. And now you could have other options like I'm on a gen. And just simple things like this would give so much more cohesion to just a random solo queue team, because now you'll know, okay, once the Dwight selects this option, it'll say, okay, this Dwight's on a generator now. Oh shit. Well, now someone else probably should go save because we know that Dwight's working on a gen. Now, if multiple people start going, well, I'm on a generator too. Well, then you know, well, shit, someone's got to go save. So someone will then use the context for that. And there'll be a couple of other context sensitive things too. Like you can let people know how much progress you actually have on your generator. You can let people know that I will be doing the rescue. Just vague things. Like you don't want to give too much communication. You just want to address the solo queue problems. Like you don't want to give the killer is, the killer's chasing me, for example. You don't want to give that much information, because then that just sort of that kind of nerfs killers like, Wraith and Myers and stuff that rely on stealth. So we don't want that. We just want to address things like no one going for rescues and face camping and things like that. And I think a system like this would actually pretty easily address face camping too, because in a scenario where somebody was being face camped and there's no communication, they could pull up their own thing and say, well, the killer is near my hook. Being face camped sucks, but the only counter to face camping most of the time is to just do generators. But the problem is in solo queue, you don't know to do that because you don't know what's going on near the hook. However, if the survivor is able to say, hey, the killer's face camping me, this will make killers face camp less, because it'll be more detrimental to do so, because everyone will know that that's what's happening. And yes, I know there are perks like Kindred that are meant to aid in this, but I think apart from making Kindred or something like that base kit, this is a more universal non-perk reliant solution that, I don't think you should rely on perks to make solo queue a bearable experience. I don't think that's a good idea. You can make Kindred do something a bit more stronger, things like that. When I suggest all these changes, they kind of go along with the fact that it sort of relies on a lot of the game changing. So you might go, oh, what about this perk? What about this perk? Just assume that they would change perks like that, because I'm talking about pretty drastic changes that require a couple of things to be definitely addressed to go alongside with the change. And there's just a lot of options you can have with this while being relatively vague. Like you can say, oh well, the Nia's saying, oh shit, I can't rescue now either. So now, the Dwight's got to go save, or I have to go save, or something like that. So this might mean the Nia is there and she is near the killer and she sees that she's being camped, but she says, I can't rescue right now. Just like vague things like that, so you have a general idea of what is going on. And I think that would address face camping. It would address being left on the hook to die first time. And it would address things like even being slugged. You could just see, oh, hey, this person says they're fully recovered now. Let me go try to actually rescue them. Just little quality of life shit like that, I think would help just so much with the solo queue aspect. And it's really easy to make. This took 20 minutes to make. Obviously, you'd have to code stuff, but it's basically just a chat box. It's not really anything extensive here. So obviously, there would be a cooldown on it, probably like 20 seconds on the actual commands, just so you can't spam the same command and piss people off and troll them. You can make the sound effect whatever you want, but just something very simple, a very basic context-sensitive radio system would go a long way with helping solo queue in this game, and I think that's something that really needs to be addressed, because then we can start comparing and balancing the game all on the same level, which makes the game overall much easier to balance, because we're basically balancing for two separate games, solo queue and survive with friends. They're very different, so doing something like this I think would help a lot. And that brings us to the next part, which is generator parts. Now, this is something that a lot of people have suggested. This is a very, very common suggestion for addressing generator times and stuff like that. I suggested the whole trial warm-up thing as a issue because gen times in the beginning of the match are sometimes you can't really do anything about it. If you get a big map like Red Forest, sometimes you can't even get to a gen before it's done because the map is simply too big and you have no real indication of where the survivors are other than a vague sense of they're on the other side of the map. So the whole trial warm-up thing I suggested, you can search my YouTube for that. I think that'd be a good idea to address that aspect of it. But at the end of the day, we need to look at the survivor side of this too, because we can't just make generators take longer. That's just a bad idea. No one wants to just sit and do generators for a longer amount of time. That's just boring. It's probably the most boring thing in the entire game. However, we can't make generators faster because then games will just simply go too fast. So we need to find something that's sort of balanced. And this idea is, talked about a lot, but I tried to refine it as much as I possibly could. So there would be a parts system, and people suggest this a bunch of times. But what would happen is you could repair a generator without a part, except it would take 2 minutes. It would take 120 seconds instead of the standard 80 seconds. All these times are variable, by the way. Just the general idea. It would take significantly longer to repair it without the actual part. And the reason you have to allow that is because sometimes you just can't get to a certain area. Sometimes the killer's camping an area, or sometimes there's a 3-gen setup or something like that. Sometimes, no matter what, you just can't get to an area to get like a part or something like that. So you need to have a fallback. Yes, you can do generators without the part. It will just take you longer, but it's infinitely safer because you don't have to risk interacting with the killer whatsoever. So it's a bit of a punishment for players that just want to sit there and do nothing but do gens, because that's the worst part of the game, in my opinion. And it will reward players that want to go out and search for these parts. So this will basically be what happens. You'll not see any parts until you actually hit a generator. Once you hit a generator, the part will be highlighted wherever it is on the map. The game will let you know that you're repairing without parts, and it will be going a lot slower. The bar ideally would be red, but I didn't change that on the mockup. Ideally, this gas can would be much further away too. The whole point of this change is to make survivors traverse the map in exchange for faster generator times. It's a much higher risk-reward system that rewards brave survivors for actually going out and possibly interacting with the killer and, playing Dead by Daylight, the fun part of the game. And in doing so, if they were to get their parts and get back quickly, they will be able to do the generator in like 30 seconds. 2 people on it, 15 seconds. Like, I'm talking it's 4 times faster than with it not actually on the gen, but now there's a giant risk involved because you have to actually traverse the map. Ideally, it would follow the whole Freddy alarm clock code where it spawns kind of a decent amount away from you, because you can't have a situation where you hop on a gen and there's a gas can 2 feet away from you and then you do a gen in 30 seconds. That would just make gen rushing even worse. That would be stupid. But if it spawns a certain amount of distance away to where it is still worth it to make the trip if you're unimpeded, but not worth it anymore if you get caught, then it suddenly becomes a very real risk-reward scenario where not only is it more fun, but it's actually beneficial to try to go get it on the other side of the map. Now, there's a couple of little caveats with that. Well, what if the person gets it and then they get knocked down by the killer? Well, ideally, the gas can would drop to the ground, and now its aura would be revealed to everyone permanently. So now you would just see a gas can on the ground. Everybody would see this. Whoever is holding the gas can, it wouldn't take an item slot, by the way. Whoever's holding the gas can, the generator that it is tied to would be highlighted in a very obvious color. Now, the thing is, these gas cans would be tied to a specific generator, and you have to have this system like that. Otherwise, a survivor could just, pick up a random gas can, go to the nearest gen, and repair it in 30 seconds. That would, again, make gen rushing worse. The whole point is to make them traverse the map and possibly interact with the killer and then come back to their position. So they have to walk a distance, but still have a net gain in time if they do it quickly. So that would address that issue. And if they get knocked down, it would be on the ground. And if someone else comes and picks it up, they would see which generator it's tied to. So you don't lose progress or anything like that. It would just be in the last place that you left it. And someone else could just pick up the slack. If you take it to a wrong generator and you try to cheese the system or something like that, then the generator will explode and you lose, some progress. And then the gas can will reset back to its original position. After probably like 5 seconds, you could have the entity effect where it spawns back in. I think that would look neat. And I think that would be really interesting as a way to refine this whole parts idea. Now, ideally, when you make a change like this, you have to address a lot of other things. So you have to address perks like Pop Goes the Weasel because suddenly things are different now. Regressing 25% of an unparted generator is a huge amount of time, whereas regressing 25% of a gen with a part in it is like nothing. So you'd have to make a lot of perk adjustments and things like that. But I think overall, a system that forces survivors to not just sit there and rewards them for doing so, but at a risk would greatly increase the amount of fun to be had for everybody because survivors would be running around everywhere. They'd be doing shit faster. And at the end of the day, if they still don't want to do that or they can't, they can still do the gen. It's just going to take a lot longer to do so. So those are the 2 ideas I've had right now. I have a bunch of ideas. I just feel like there's no point in even suggesting them because it's just what's the point. But I thought I would do something like this today because I've had a pretty bad headache and I've not been able to stream. So that is it, guys. I was curious to hear, or I am curious to hear what you guys think of these suggestions. I don't have a script for this. I just sort of just off the cuff listed stuff. So I'm sure I missed, loopholes and things like that, but I'm more than happy to discuss them because I'm bored. But that is it, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.